Hello guys, in this video we are going to create a game called Hangman. If you don't know about the game, just Google it please, you'll find it on Wikipedia. So what's going on here, there are a couple of hidden letters and here is the keyboard. Each time we click a key on the screen or press it with our keyboard, for example A, you can see that it is put into history, and if the character is correct it is also replaced by this hidden character. And here is a user feedback, so if the character is correct then it says correct, if the character is wrong, so for example Z is a wrong choice, and if the character is pressed again it says that we have already entered that. And yeah, so that's basically it. And here is the Hangman. So a part of Hangman is drawn each time we fail, and we can fail maximally 6 times. So let me just demonstrate that. So there is a head, body, 2 legs and 2 arms. We have lost the game, and it says that here it displays the correct word, and we have an option to play again, which just basically refreshes the page. And as you saw here, we have a loading animation because we are using a third-party API to fetch random words. And just to showcase what happens when we win the game, because these words are very tough, I am helping myself with some console.logging. So let me just put this here. So we have won the game, the background is green, and it displays the number of tries. Basically every time we press a key or press it with our mouse here, the number of tries is just incremented. And that's that, and it's the same button as before. We can play again and the game and the app refreshes. So that's it. Let's start coding. So this is the basic setup. I have created index.html, script.js and style.css. Script.js is currently empty, and I have put some styles into style.css, but I won't go over them. It's very short. So if you want to, you can check it out. I will put the link to the code down below. And here I have included those links, and this is the simple navbar I have created using Materialize.css. It will be the main framework for this project, and you can find their documentation here. And as you can see, I have just copied their code for the navigation bar here and have modified it a little bit. Yeah, that is it. And if we open this up with live server, you can see that all we have is the navigation bar, and because of our CSS I have chosen different background color, and that is basically it for the setup. So the first thing we are going to build is our Hangman. So I have created 2 simple divs, and in here is our canvas with an ID of Hangman. And how we are going to do this is within Canvas API. So if you don't know about Canvas, here is a great article on MDN. It explains the Canvas API in great detail, and I'm going to be using the same code that is here, so everything will be found here. We are going to be using very simple shapes like circles and rectangles, so it won't be that hard. And if I demonstrate that here in our script.js, so firstly we have to select our canvas element, so document.getElementById Hangman, because our ID is here Hangman. Then we have to call a special method on the canvas and store it into another object called canvas.getContext2D. And now we can begin by creating a rectangle. So for example, ctx. So this is the syntax that we are going to be using. ctx.beginPath. Then we are going to say rectangle, or we are going to say ctx.arc, which is going to draw a circle. This is going to draw a rectangle, and then we are going to say ctx.fillStyle to some color, I don't know, black for example, and then ctx.fill. So this is everything I'm going to be using in this Hangman. So let me first showcase our rectangle, and it accepts 4 parameters. First, to our x offset and y offset, then it is the width and then the height. So if I say, for example, 10, 10, 100, 150, I should see here, yes, a rectangle that is, so here x is 0, here y is 0, so 10 from here, 10 from here, width is 100 and height is 150. And if we try to, so this is everything we are going to be using for the rectangles, and then if we try to draw our, circle, we just do arc, and the only difference is that this has 5 parameters. So first two are the x and y values, also where the center of the circle will be. So let's say, for example, 50 and 50, then the radius, for example, 100, and then if you remember from your high school math, full angle is 2 pi, so we have to specify that, and by saying starting angle is 0 and the end angle is math.pi times 2, and that is it. So for example, change the color, and now we should have, it is too big, let me just do this, dot width equals 400, and the same for height, so it will be easier. And now, okay, nothing happens, we have to put this center coordinates a little bit more far away. Yeah, so that's it, this is the circle and this is the rectangle, and that's everything there is to drawing our hangman. And because I don't want to bore you, I'm just going to copy and paste the code. So this is our code. Don't worry, I know this is a lot, but let me explain. So this is our hangman. Let me just move this into a separate file, like this. And now in here we are going to create, firstly let me just include this here. We have to include it before script.js, of course, because otherwise it won't work, like this. And now we can say const hangman equals new hangman, for example, yellow. And now if we do hangman.draw hang, for example, and draw head, it will, yes, it draws these two components. So what have I done here is I have selected the canvas, created the CTX object width and height, and here is our classman, hangman. So this is the constructor, so I have passed in the color so it will be more dynamic. This is the width, this means the width of the hang and body parts, as you will see later. Body height and some pretty self-explanatory variables. And then here is the draw hang method. So basically I have these rect and arc methods, and then at the end fill style and fill, so nothing too different. So as you can see here, I have not only drawn rectangles, but at the end here I have some circles, so that is why I have some circular, so .arc methods here, so you won't be surprised. So for the head it is only the arc method. Then for the body, let me just demonstrate the body also. Body, so the body is the same, it is one rectangle, and at the bottom is one circle. And now for the arms, like this, it should be the full hangman. So here objects are rotated, and how I achieved this is by searching vigorously on the Google, and here a cool dude wrote 8 years ago a function to basically rotate the rectangle around its axis, and I have just used his function. I don't know what it actually does, and this function is here. It just uses some additional translate and rotate and save properties. So this is pretty much it, and I use this function here in the left leg and right leg and left arm and right arm. And yes, this is the whole hangman structure. Yes, I have created a class of hangman. So if you don't know about classes, you can check this article out on javascript.info. So now we can start building our logic. In our index.html I have created some more crucial components to the game, and don't be scared. Here I have just changed that our canvas element is paired in the same div as a class called word, and in this word class basically what we're going to have is two divs and one paragraph. So this paragraph will warn the user if the character that he typed is wrong, or if it is correct, or if the same character that was already put into history before. And this div will inform the user of the current history of characters that he already pressed. And here are hidden characters will be created. So if the word is car, 3 divs with underscores will be created. Then here we have a separate div in our game. This is the main div called game, and in here we have basically everything except our navbar and our loading screen. So this is the loading animation at the beginning. And in here we are going to create our keyboard, so dynamically create keys from a 2D array. And here is our model that will pop up when we finish the game, so if we lose or if we win. And yes, this is our markup. And now we can start. So here's where we left off from here. And for the game now I want to create a separate component called not component file, because this is not React. And in here, so basically in our game I want to have the whole functionality of our Hangman. So let me just put this here. And in this case I just want to say, for example, const game equals new game. So smart thing to do would be to pass in a word, right? So we want to create a game based on some word. And how do we do that? So yes, we will create some word, for example, let's say car for now, and this will be our constructor. And before we do anything we have to include this here before the script and after the Hangman. So game.js, and now nothing should be wrong, except it is. Game is not defined. Okay, no problem, because we have not done anything here yet. And now what we want to do is do class game and constructor, and in here we want to pass in a word. And now what we are going to do is say this.word equals word. Let's just console.log this so we can see it is working. It is working, yay! So right now everything will display a loading screen because I have created a class called hidden. So let me remove this and add it here. Like this. Now it should work. Yes, it works. So here is our history, here is our start typing prompt, and here will be the keyboard. So we can start by creating keys. We can remove this. Say for example this.keys equals, and as I said I will make a 2-dimensional array, so I will just copy this. So here are our keys, and now what we firstly want to do is create our keyboard. So what we are going to do is create a function called create keyboard, and now this function, it will iterate over our keys. So we can use a method called for each. And then we can say for each line. So if you don't know about, I hope you know what for each does. So if for each line, and now we can say const row equals document.create element, and so we are going to create a div. Now then we are going to append, use some class list on, so row. And then we are going to, so firstly we have to select our keyboard equals document.get element by id keyboard. So the keyboard is here, id keyboard, yes, good. So we can say keyboard.append row, and now nothing dramatic will happen because we have not created anything yet. So if we check this, no, nothing dramatic happened because we didn't actually, okay, never mind. I know what is wrong, we didn't even call the create keyboard method. That's dumb me. Let's do that here. Game.create keyboard, and in here, yes, here we go, we have created 3 rows. And now for each row we want to create keys. So I will do line.forEach. So for each line And now we will say for each key we are going to create another div. So let me copy this, and now we are going to add some class lists. And so first one is zdepth1, which is from Materialize. Then here we're going to add our own class called key. We are going to change the inner HTML to be key. So remember, this key is referring to those values in this array. And now we want to append it to our row. But now we've got a small problem, because this is looking ugly and this is looking like an accordion, and we don't want an accordion, we want a keyboard. So what we will do is here create another div, document.createElementDiv, and then we are going to add some class lists to it called line, because it has display flex and everything will be in one line. And then we are going to append line div here, and in here we want to append our key to our line div. So now everything should look cool. Yes, great. So now everything looks cool, and here you can see that we have those keys and everything is awesome. Now our keyboard is created. Now what we want to do is create our hidden character places, and for that we firstly have to select this element, hidden cars. Let me select this, let me this, hidden cars, like this. And now we are going to create a method called hidden cars, so we will know. And now what we want to do is, so we want to basically to loop over every single character in our word, and then we want to create a div dynamically. So this.word.forEach, but because this is a string, this won't work, it works only on arrays. So what we can do is say array.from, and now it will work. And now what we can do is for each character in the word, we can do const element equals document.createElementDiv, and then we want to change its inner HTML to be underscore. Then we want to append some class lists, .add hidden character, and this one here. Now we want to hidden characters append, and we want to append this element to our hidden characters div that we selected here. So let's do that, and we don't need this parameter, and we can just do this, and this is it. If we call this method here, click create hidden characters, it should work. So yes, we have three hidden characters here. If I change this, for example, to Karl, it should generate that many divs. So that is very cool. So that's basically it for our create. Let me just create a method called create that will call those two together. So everything will be generated when we call this method. So if we do this, we should have the same result. We do not have the same result because we have to do this dot like this, because this is our method. It's not a function, it's class method, so we have to specify this. So this is referring to our game object here. And yes, everything is working now. This is basically everything we have to do to create our game, and now we can focus properly on our logic. The next thing to do is adding some event listeners. Before I do that, I have to just mention that I have put this hangman.drawHang in our create method. So when we call create, everything here is created. So that's looking Fine, and now what we have to do in our constructor, we have to add an event listener to our to the window object, and we are going to add in key press, and then we are going to call a special function that we are going to write. So handle key press, and we are going to pass in E. I'll show you in a minute why. Not in a minute, in a second actually, if I can type so fast. In here we are going to console.log our e.key, so that will return, you will see, I will demonstrate. So if I press A, for example, console.logs A, and so on. Now what we want to do is store this key into a variable. So we can say this dot character is e.key, and because we have initialized our variable here, I just want to put it here just because I like it. So here I will put an empty string here, and in here I will just update our value of this dot car to current key. And now what we want to do is implement logic so that if the user presses invalid key, so the one that is not in this array, it will warn him. So we have to write a method that will return true if the current key is in this array and false otherwise. So we can say that here is write a function called isValidKey, which will be a short function. Now we write it like this, and we will basically just loop over keys with .sum method, and then for each row we will check if the row includes our character. So what this basically means is that because we have two-dimensional array, we cannot just say this dot keys dot includes, because it is two-dimensional. So we have to iterate over each, and then if any of these arrays include this character, it will return true, otherwise false. So that is the approach for the two-dimensional array, and for one-dimensional would just be this.keys.includes. So in here we can say if this.isValidKey, then we can for example console.log this character valid, else we are going to say invalid. So if we try to run, so A is valid, S is valid, then numbers should be invalid, and some special characters should be invalid as well. So this is currently working. Now what we want to do is we want to put the character into some history. So we have to create a variable called this.history. And make it an empty array. Firstly, we want to, instead of console.logging, we want to select the warning, which I already did. And in here, what we want to do, if the valid key is, so if we negated this, so if the key that we pressed is not valid, we want to return. But before we return, we want to update our warning. So warning.inner HTML equals, and we will say, and we will make a template literal error character is invalid, and here we will put this dot character. Wait, let me just remove this exclamation mark. So that's it, and then the next thing we want to do is push this character to history. So this dot history dot push this dot character, and let me just console.log it, and you will see why we cannot work like this. It is because I pressed A, for example, and now I press D and everything's cool, but if I press A again, it is still pushed into history. And so to avoid that, we have to write another if statement. So if and we can call it something like is in history. It will be very much the same as this one, but because it's one-dimensional array, as I said before, we are just going to say this.history.includes, this dot character. So if the history includes character, it will return true, otherwise false. And so in here, if this is in history, then we will say warning inner HTML equals to you have already entered that, and we are going to simply return. And now we can push the character. I forgot to console.log it. Console.log history, like that. So I pressed A, I pressed D. If I press A again, let's see here. As you can see, you have already entered that and nothing pops up, so that's working. Now what we want to do is update our history array. So it will be displayed here. And how do we do that? We will simply create another function called update history. And in this function we are going to create a span document dot create element span, and that is because we are going to if you remember, in here I have so this is the history, this is the opening bracket and closing bracket, you can see here. And I have marked this with an ID because in JavaScript you can actually insert elements before a certain element. So we are going to insert every character that will be put into history before this one. So what we will do here is, we will select the before element, before equals document.get element by ID, and it will be history closed bracket. I think it is history closed bracket. Now what we're going to do is say span dot inner HTML will be equal to the last element in our history. So this is dot history, and then to get the last element in our history, have to do this dot history dot length -1. Then we are going to add a bunch of classes, so it will be pretty history. This is our class, and then 2 of the Materialize classes, text, and another one text lighten 5. And then how to actually insert it into the DOM. So we have to select the parent element, or not the parent element, parent node of our before element, and then we have to use a function called insert before, and then we specify the element which we want to insert and then the before element. So now this should work if we just call this method here, update history div, and now if we press, for example, A, it is here. If we press S, is here, D is here, G, so everything is working. If I press A again, it says you have already entered it. So that's great. And now what we want to do is actually check if the character is in Word. So we are going to write another function which is going to be the same as the previous one. So this.word includes this.character. So if the character will be in Word, we are going to, if is in Word, we are going to say warning dot inner HTML equals to correct, and else warning dot inner HTML will be wrong choice. So if the word is correct, we also want to replace every single character here with the correct character. So in this example we have this word. So if we press the character A, we need to get the indexes of A. So these are 1, 3, 5 and 7. We want to replace them here. So 1, 3, 5 and 7 when the user enters A. So how to do that is pretty simple. We have to create another function, just like you guessed, and we will call it get indexes of, and it will be a longer function. It will have 3 whole lines. So we create an array, and then we have to iterate over the words. So, and remember, we cannot do it like this. We have to create a array.from because it's a string .from, and now we do for each, and then for each character in the word we want to firstly check if the character is equal to the character that we have pressed. Then we want to push the index into our array, so we have to also get the index, and in for each we can do that easily by just specifying the second parameter, and so we can push this here. And because this function is very small, I will just make it in one line so it looks all pretty like this. Now just return the array, and now if we console.log this, we can say console.log this.get indexes of. So if I press A, for example, I should get not an empty array. This is not cool. This is not cool. What have we done wrong? This word for each, if array that push. I have to use oh my god, I have to use this. I have failed you. If I press A, as you can see, 1, 3, 5 and 7. If I press L, it's also multiple indexes, because in here we have 3 L's. Now what we have to do is just replace every hidden character that is on that index with that key, so with this dot character, because in this case we have entered the A, so the character A must be replaced on all these indexes. So we will say document.getElements by class name hidden character, and then we will select all of these indexes, so we will iterate over this array and then just change their inner HTML. So we will do that easily in here, and we will just say this.get indexes of, and then because this is array we can do a for each, and then for each index we want to select a document get elements by class name, and we want to select hidden character that we created here, if you remember, here, so hidden character, and then we want to change the element on this index and its inner HTML to this dot character. So I hope this is clear, and now yeah, this is it. This is another ultimate one-liner, which is very cool. So now if we try to press, for example, A, every A is replaced. If I press L, every L is replaced, and C and R, for example. And now in here in our else statement, if the user fails, we have to somehow handle our Hangman, and to do that we have to keep track of how many fails we have done. So we have to create a variable, for example called this.fails equals 0, and in here we can just do this.fails plus plus, and then we can write a function to handle our Hangman. So what can we do? We can say handle Hangman, then we say switch, it will be a switch statement of this.fails, and then do case 1 Hangman.drawHead break, then we can do case 2 and case 3 like this, and now this will correctly update our Hangman. So in here we can say this.handle Hangman, and because we increment our fails here, it doesn't matter if we have the this.handle Hangman in here or out there, but I will just keep it here for the convenience. And now it should update our Hangman correctly. And let's see, if I press A, for example, this changes. If I press G, a part of Hangman is drawn. If I press G again, I can't do anything anymore. And if I press, for example, H, another part is drawn, so that is working fine. So now what we want to do is check if the game is over. So we are going to create another variable called this.isOver, which will be set to false. And in here we have to create another two methods that will check if the game was won or lost. So let's do that firstly. So we can say win, it will be a short function. And so how to determine the win? In here we can create a variable to check how many correct tries the user has input. So we can say in here, for example, this dot correct plus plus, and we can put this here and initialize it with 0. And now, when is the game over? So in this example, if I try to guess my car, C-A-R-L. So in this case I have won the game by pressing only 4 characters. So we have to create a set. If you see the pattern, for example, if I have an array equals A, and B, this is our array, and if I try to make it into a set, it will basically just remove the duplicates. So that's what we want, and we will do that here. So we will say this dot correct equals a new set of this dot word and then checked its length, if you understand me. And we can say new set, and then we have to do an array dot from, because it is a string and it won't work with a string. So this dot word, and then we do dot length like that, and that should do it. Yeah, that should do it. And then the lose function will be we can just check if this dot fails equals 6, then it will return true. So in here we can say if this dot win or this dot lose, then we say this dot is over equals true. And if this is over, so this what basically does is just updates our value. So what we want to do now is, if this game is over, we want to handle our game over. So we will write a function called this.handle game over, and let me write that function, for example, here without this. And in here we want to disable the user to input any more numbers. So we want to do something like e.prevent default, but for that we need the event parameter, so we have to put it here and here. So we do e.prevent default, and then what we do is we have to open up our model. And so what we can do is select our model. So const model equals document dot get element by ID, and it is this model here, over model. Just copy this. Then we have the, so this is the Materialize.css model code. So I have just looked it up on their website, and for our model to work we have to create a variable, and then we do m.modal.init model, and then we pass in some options, and these options in our case will be prevent scrolling true and dismissible false. And now what can we do is we can, so in here where is it in here we can open our model. So we can say instance.open, and this will open up our model. Let's check what this does, but before I have to actually remove this from here. Or no, never mind. Okay, so let's see what it does. So I will try to so this is the model, but here is a property, not a property, an element called over text, which we have not updated, so we have to do that here. And we will do that by saying modal, or not modal, we have to create another element to, so let's say const over text equals document.getElement by ID. I think it is called like that, over text, yes. And now what we do is take this, and in here we can say over text.inner.html, and then based on if the game was won or lost, we can say so we can say something like this, if this.win, then over.html will be a template string you won in tries. This will be this.tries. So I have not created this. We have to create that logic, and every time we press a key we will just increment our this.tries, and in here we have to initialize it with 0. And now in here, where were I? In here we say else if this.lose, we say over text.inner.html equals another template string you lost the correct word was, and just make it strong and close our strong, and we will say this.word. And in the else part we can do over.inner.html will be equal to none, so an empty string, and this can be rewritten in a one-liner, so I will do it like this because it is way more fancy. It is called a ternary operator. So basically the syntax is like this. This is the condition, this is the true part, this is the false part. So this is the condition. If the condition is true, then it will execute this statement, otherwise it will execute this statement. So we say this in here, then we say this. We don't need this because we have already set this in here. And then because there is another if statement, so we can just nest it here, and we say it like this loot, and do another if statement, so like this, and then we just do empty character. So this is the same as we did here, but in one line. So this is our over text updated. Then we also want to update our modal background, so modal class list dot add, and we will do the same thing as we did here, so the ternary operator. So if this dot win, then we will say green, as if this dot lose, we will say red, and else we will do the empty string. So that should do it. If we check it out, if I press, for example, and let me just win the game. So I have won in 4 tries, and if I try to press, it will. So we have to add that functionality to remove the event listener. And now I want, if I play again, it just refreshes the page. Now if I, for example, fail, it is another. So the model is correctly updated, so it is in red background, and that is it. Now what I want to do is put this window event listener into a separate function called init. So this init function will ultimately have everything to set up our game. So in here we will call this .create. So it will call this create, which will do everything in here. And then we will add our window event listener, and then we also want the logic for the user to be able to press those keys. and this will be created. So we have to for each of these keys we have to add a event listener on click. So we will do that by so firstly we have to select all of the keys. So we can do this dot get elements by class name and do key. So if we check this out, this is not this, I mean this. So its class is key, and we select all of them, and then we want to do a for each. But remember, this is an HTML collection, so we have to do array.from, because HTML collection is not an array. And now we do this and say for each key we want to key.add event listener, and it will be click, and then the function we will call is, firstly let's just check if this works. We will let's just firstly console.log key.inner HTML. So if we try this, and if we, for example, press O, it should, okay, nothing happens. Very cool, because I have not actually called this method anywhere. That if I press A, okay, this works. If I click R here, okay, it is correctly displayed, so that works. Now what we want to do is, instead of console.logging this, we have to add a class list to it. So it will, the user will see it as clicked, or not as clicked, with no background. So to do that we have to say key.classlist, not key, but because if we didn't have classes we could do something like this, .classlist.add, and we could do clicked. But the thing is that this is referring to our game object, this object here, and we cannot do it like this, so we have to do it in a bit of strange way. So we have to specify our event parameter, and in here we do event.target. If I firstly console.log our target, so it will make more sense then. This is our target, and as you can see the background was removed because the class called clicked was added. And this is our element, and this is another example. So that is working fine. Let me remove this console.log. And now what we can do is we want to add the whole logic to all of the buttons. So we have to say this. So we could do this.handle key press because this holds all the logic, and this is a totally valid option. So let me just do that. So let us try this. So if I press with our keys, it still works. If I press it with this, as you can see, it doesn't work, and that is because in here this E is referring to something else. Basically, if we try to console.log our E, our function, so if we do e.key, if I press the key with my keyboard, nothing is wrong, but if I press it here, it says undefined. That is because we actually can't access the same property key on this element. So before we assign e.key to our character, we have to make sure that it is from the correct event listener. So what can we do is we can check, this will be again a ternary operator, so we can check if this.type equals a key press, then we will assign it the value of e.key. And otherwise, if it's not key press, so if it is click, then we will basically just do this e.target.inner HTML, inner HTML. And now if we look at this, if I press A, it's working. If I press here C, it's working. As you can see, nothing's wrong. And if I finish the game, everything's fine. and even the loose function works. So great. And now what we just want to accomplish is when I press a key with my keyboard, I want to color or not color, I want to add the clicked class list to the key here on the keyboard that is on the screen. And to do that we can do something like this. In here we can check if this e.type equals equals click, and if this is true we can just so if this is true we must select the correct div that is here, and we have to add a class list clicked to it. So I will try to select this key. So I will say const key div equals, and how I will do that is by selecting our document.get elements by class name key. So that will select all of these keys. And now what we want to do is call a method which is called filter. But remember, we can only use this method on an array, so we will do array.from. And now this filter method will return me the correct key. So I want the key which has the same content, the same inner HTML as my current character. So to do that, I will do filter key, and it will return me the array where the key.inner HTML equals to re.key. So I mean not e.key but this dot character. So if we do this, then this returns an array with only one element because in our array is every element is unique, and so we have to select the first here, the first element here, because it's only an array with one element. And then we can firstly console.log it, so we can see if the div was correctly chosen. So if I press for example A, nothing happens, which is not what I wanted. Here I meant key press. So if I press A, for example, here see the correct key is marked. So if I press B, for example, the B, so only the element, only the key div in which its inner HTML is equal to my currently pressed character, only this element is returned to me from this function. And now we want to do what we want to do is check if this key div exists. So if it's undefined, it won't check this condition, just in case. So we can do classlist.add clicked. Now it should work. So let's see if I press A, it is successfully adding classes to it. So this is exactly what we want. So the functionality is now almost complete. Now what we want to do is some final touches, and this is in here. When we updated the value of this, we also want to, so when the game is lost or anything, we want to color those pressed characters gray. So we want to lock the keys. So let me just put some comments here. Lock keys. This will be update modal, and so this is all together. And in here we can say array.from. We will select all the keys, key, and then we will say for each key we will add a class list called locked. So what this will do, not licked, locked. So what this will do, it will add a class list locked to every character, not a character, I mean key. but in CSS I have made it so it looks gray because I think it's cooler. And then what we want to do, because we are almost over, but we mustn't forget one crucial thing, and that is removing our keypress event listener. And to do that, simply we would just say, for example, window dot remove event listener key press. And then we will say this dot handle key press. Not and like that. But you will see it won't work because in classes it doesn't work that way, because the this keyword must be bound to our function. So this function is now not this keyword is not bound to this function, and it is actually creating a another function. So it is not removing the correct event listener. So that's why it won't work. So if we see here event listeners, we can see key press. If we refresh key press, and if we finish the game, we do this, key press is not removed. And to do this, we have to, in our constructor, we have to create another method, or not in our constructor, but in here. We have to create another this.bound event listener, and we will say this.handle key press dot bind. So we will bind this, and this will prevent this from happening. And we can do this. We can replace all of this with this, and in here we do, where is it? Here we do this. That should work. And now if we try to finish the game, so now the key press is here, and now if I lose the game and refresh, the key press is removed. So that's that. So now all of our logic is complete, and now we can start by fetching random words from a third-party API. So now what we are going to do is, in here, we're going to remove this, save it, and now nothing should pop up, and that is the correct case. And now what we want to do, document dot add event listener, and we will say DOM content loaded. So when the document loads, we want to do everything. So we will write a function, for example, const get random word, that will, as the name suggests, it will return a random word from an API. And this API that we will use is this one here. So on this link here, let me go to this page. So every time we make a request, a random word is generated, and now we will implement that with async functions. And to do that, we need a async function as well. So we have to do this and this, and now in here we want to say await, not await, const response equals await fetch. So this is a fetch API which will basically just fetch a word from here, and when the word is fetched, so this response will wait this fetch, and the response will be stored into here. So if we try to console.log response, and in here say, so in here we can also say async and do get random word like this. I think it should work. Okay, it works. So response is here, and we want, here is not specified, but we want to turn that response into the JSON format. So to do that, we say await response.json. It is again asynchronous, So we can do this, and now here are our three elements, not elements, properties of our currently fetched object, and we want the word property. So to do that, we want the word property, and as you saw here, it is an array, so basically we have to firstly do this, otherwise it won't work. And now it should, always when I reload, it should fetch another word. And all of this I want to make lowercase, so it won't, because we don't have uppercase letters implemented. So we will say to lowercase, like that. And now if I, so everything is lowercase, and that is very cool. And now, as you probably guessed, we can make this an ultimate one-liner, and to do that we have to, so as you can see here, we can replace this response with this, but we can do await, we have to actually, or do we need to, yeah, I think we have to need those braces, and then we need to await the whole thing. So we do this, or not, now we want to await this whole thing, and then we choose the 0th index, and then we do dot word, and then instead of this, of course, to lower case, and we can just do in here return. So that should give us the same result. It doesn't, very unfortunate. So return await fetch JSON 0, so because we have to actually call the to lowercase. So now it should work, but it doesn't work, which is very, very, very sad, because we are not console.logging anything. So const word equals. So if we do this now, this now we should, yes, finally we get random words, and because this one-liner can be made even cooler, we can remove the return, and this is our ultimate, this is our ultimate one-liner. So that's pretty cool and stuff. And let me just put this ultimate one-liner here. And now what we want to do is start our game. So what we want to do is, this is our const word, okay, and then we can console.log it just for debugging purposes. And then we will say const game equals new game word, and that is everything. There is the whole magic. So we just do game.init, and this is it. So what we do now, refresh the page, and here is our word. So if we try to win, this is our winning screen, this is our losing screen. And yes, but as you probably saw, we didn't have the loading animation set up yet. So in order to do that, let me just write a couple of more functions. So we will say const set loading screen, and what this function will do is just basically document dot get element by ID, and we will select the game div, so this game, and we will class list dot add hidden, and then on the loading element we will do the exactly opposite. So in here we will remove this class, and by default we will make this hidden, so it will display our loading screen. So that's that. And now I want to do some other function, const set game screen, which will do just the opposite of this, so it will do this. So yeah, that's basically it. We choose a word, and before we choose a word, we want to set loading screen, and after our before we create our game, we want to set game screen, and yeah, that is it. So if we try to refresh, loading screen is there, we can win, we can play again, loading screen is still there, we can lose. So let me click some pairs here. What a strange word. We lost, and we can play again, and everything works fine. So that is it, guys. This is how you make Hangman properly in JavaScript. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.